Close your eyes, if you wish, and let your mind drift. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a great stone hall, its walls draped in heavy tapestries that muffle the world outside. The air is thick with the scent of wood smoke, tallow, and something faintly sour, perhaps the remnants of last night's feast. The year is somewhere in the 14th century, and you are not a knight, nor a lady, nor a merchant with a purse of silver. You are one of the invisible ones, a servant in a noble household, bound to a life of labor that begins before the sun rises and ends long after it sets. Tonight, we slip into their world, a world of quiet footsteps, whispered gossip, and the weight of unspoken rules. This is not a tale of grand battles or shining crowns, but of the people who polished the silver, swept the floors, and kept the fires burning. Settle in, let your shoulders soften, and allow the rhythm of their lives to carry you through the centuries. We begin with a single, day one long, unyielding day as a lowly servant in a medieval noble household. From there, we'll follow the story of Joan, a maid whose curiosity led to scandal. We'll uncover the secret language of servants, their hidden paths and quiet rebellions. And finally, we'll step into the polished world of the upper-tier servants where elegance masked its own kind of servitude. This is a journey through the forgotten corners of history, drawn from household rolls, letters, and the stones of old manners. Let's begin. Imagine yourself waking in the dim pre-dawn, the air cold and sharp against your skin. It is 4 a.m., and the world is still cloaked in darkness. You are 15, perhaps 16, a scullion or a laundry maid in a noble household, say, the Berkeley family's great manor in Gloucestershire, England, in the year 1360. Your bed is no bed at all, but a thin straw mat laid near the kitchen hearth, where the embers have long since faded to a faint glow. The straw beneath you is damp, prickly, and smells faintly of mildew, mingling with the ever-present odor of grease and cabbage that clings to the walls. Somewhere nearby, a dog stirs, its chain clinking softly against the stone floor. The steward's voice cuts through the stillness, low but firm. Up now. The household waits for no one. Your day has begun, and it will not end until the stars are high. You rise, your limbs stiff from the cold, and pull on your coarse-wool tunic. It scratches against your skin, its fibers worn but never soft. The fabric is heavy with the scent of sweat and smoke, for there is no time or means to wash it often. Your shoes, if you can call them that, are little more than leather scraps tied around your feet, offering scant protection against the uneven flagstones. You move quickly, for to linger is to invite a sharp word or worse a switch across the back. The household rolls of the Berkeley family, meticulously kept, tell us of servants like you, unnamed often, but listed by task scullion, kitchen boy, laundress, each bound to a rhythm of labor that shaped their days and their lives. Your first task is to fetch water. The well is outside, across a courtyard slick with frost. You carry to wooden pails, their iron bands rusted and biting into your palms. The air is heavy with the scent of damp earth and the faint tang of manure from the stables nearby. The buckets are heavy, and the path is uneven. One misstep could send you sprawling, and spilled water means a tongue lashing from the steward. You haul the pails back to the kitchen, your arms aching, your breath visible in the chill air. The kitchen is already alive with movement, cooks shouting, pots clanging, and the low crackle of a fire being stoked. You pour the water into a great iron cauldron, careful not to splash, for every drop is precious in a household that consumes barrels of it daily. The fire must be tended next. You kneel by the hearth, your knees pressing into the cold stone, and arrange logs from a dwindling pile. The wood is damp, and it hisses as you coax the flames higher with a bellows. Soot clings to your hands, your face, your hair, and the sharp scent of burning pine fills your nose. The Goodman of Paris, a 14th century manual for household management, advises that fires must be kept steady, for a cold hearth is a disgrace to the Lord's name. You know this well, for a single lapse could mean dismissal, and dismissal means starvation or worse. You work in silence, for the rules are clear. Speak only when spoken to, and never to the lord or lady directly. Breakfast for the household is being prepared, but it is not for you. The lords and ladies will dine on white bread, roasted capon, and spiced wine, served in the great hall under the glow of beeswax candles. Your meal, if you can call it that, comes later, a hunk of coarse rye bread, perhaps a thin slice of cheese, and a mug of weak ale, shared among the kitchen staff. The bread is hard, its crust flecked with ash from the oven, and you eat quickly, standing, for there is no time to sit. The household rolls note such meals. Servants received 1 loaf daily, of the second sort, meaning the rough, dark bread unfit for the high table. Your stomach grumbles, but you've learned to ignore it. Hunger is a constant companion, as familiar as the ache in your hands. The morning stretches on, and your tasks multiply. You sweep the rushes from the floor of the great hall, where last night's feast left a mess of bones, spilled wine, and trampled herbs. The rushes, dried straw, and lavender scatter to mask the smell of unwashed bodies, and spilled food are heavy with grease and must be replaced. You carry them out in armfuls, the sharp ends pricking your skin, and spread fresh ones in their place. The air in the hall is heavy with the scent of old ale and roasted meat, and you move quickly, for the lady might pass through at any moment, and she must not see you dawdling. The ordinances of household, a set of rules from the period, sternly remind servants to keep their eyes low and their hands busy. You've learned to move like a shadow, unnoticed but essential. Next, you're sent to the laundry, a damp, steaming room at the edge of the manor. Here, the air is thick with the smell of lye and wet wool. You plunge your hands into a tub of scalding water mixed with ashes, scrubbing the lord's linen shirts and the ladies' chemises. The lye stings your raw, cracked hands, and the heat makes your face flush. The goodman of Paris instructs that linens must be clean and sweet-smelling, a task that takes hours of pounding, rinsing, and wringing. You hang the clothes to dry over wooden racks, your fingers numb, your back aching from bending over the top. A moment's pause brings a sharp glance from the head laundress, and you return to work, the rhythm of your labor as steady as a heartbeat. Noon arrives, and the household gathers for the main meal. You're back in the kitchen, carrying trays of food to the servers who will present them in the hall. The trays are heavy, laden with platters of venison, boiled cabbage, and loaves of monchette bread. The heat from the kitchen fire is stifling, and sweat beads on your forehead as you navigate the narrow corridors. You must not spill, must not falter, for a single mistake could bring the steward's wrath. You catch a glimpse of the great hall as you pass, the lord and lady seated at the high table, their voices low, their plates gleaming with silver. You are invisible to them, a fleeting shape in the corner of their world. The ordinances remind you, look not upon the lord or lady, lest they think you bold. You keep your eyes down, your steps careful. The afternoon brings more tasks, cleaning the privies, scouring pots, fetching firewood, airing the master's bedding. The privies are the worst, their stench a mix of human waste and a sharp bite of lime used to mask it. You scrub the wooden seats with a rag, holding your breath, knowing that a poorly cleaned privy could spread disease, a fact noted in household manuals, which warn of miasmas that sicken the noble family. The pots are no better, their insides crusted with grease and charred scraps. You scrub with sand and ashes, your knuckles raw, the repetitive motion lulling your mind into a kind of haze. The firewood is heavy, the bedding must be shaken out and turned, and every task is done under the watchful eye of the steward or the head cook. As evening falls, the household prepares for supper, a lighter meal but no less demanding. You light the torches along the corridors, their flames casting flickering shadows on the stone walls. The scent of pitch and burning wood fills the air, mingling with the faint sweetness of beeswax from the candles in the hall. You carry jugs of wine to the servers, careful not to let a drop spill, for wine is costly and waste is a sin. The lord's cupbearer, a higher servant, takes the jug from you without a word, his fine tunic a stark contrast to your rough wool. You retreat to the kitchen where the cooks are shouting orders, their voices hoarse from the day's work. Supper ends and the household begins to quiet, but your work is not done. You sweep the hall again, gather the scraps for the dogs or the poor, and scrub the tables with vinegar to remove the grease. The air is cooler now, the fire in the kitchen dying down. You're given a moment to eat a bowl of pottage, thick with barley and cabbage, and another mug of ale. It's barely enough to fill you, but you're too tired to care. The household roles of the Paston family note that servants' rations were carefully measured, ensuring nothing was wasted. You eat in silence, the other servants around you too exhausted for talk. Finally, near midnight, you're allowed to rest. You return to your straw mat by the hearth, the straw now flattened from your weight. The kitchen is dark, save for the faint glow of embers. The air smells of smoke, grease, and the lingering tang of vinegar. You lie down, your body aching, your hands still tingling from the lie. Sleep comes quickly, but it is shallow, broken by the knowledge that the steward will wake you again in a few hours. The rhythm of your life is unrelenting, a cycle of labor and silence, governed by rules you dare not break. The Berkeley household rolls list dozens of servants like you, their names rarely recorded, their lives measured in tasks completed and mistakes avoided. This was the world of the medieval servant, a world of soot and straw, of whispered fears and quiet endurance. The Goodman of Paris speaks of servants as the hands of the household, essential yet unseen. You carried the water, lit the fires, scrubbed the floors, and bore the weight of a noble family's comfort. But could you have lasted a day? The cold, the hunger, the endless tasks, the constant fear of dismissal, each a thread in the fabric of their lives. As you drift now, imagine yourself sinking into that straw mat, the distant clink of a dog's chain fading into the night. Let the rhythm of their lives carry you forward into the next chapter of this forgotten world. Imagine yourself standing in a shadowed corridor, the air cool and heavy with the scent of polished wood and faint traces of lavender from the rushes, scattered across the floor. It is the year 1452, and you are in the Norfolk manor of Lady Agnes Paston, a woman known for her sharp tongue and sharper scrutiny. The walls around you are thick stone, their surfaces worn smooth by centuries of hands brushing past, and the flickering light of a single tallow candle casts long, wavering shadows. You are not alone in this corridor. A girl, no more than 17, stands a few paces away, her head tilted slightly, her ear pressed close to the oak door of the lady's private chamber. Her name is Joan, a maidservant in this household, and her story is one of curiosity, scandal, and the delicate balance of power that defined the lives of those who served. Tonight, we follow her, piecing together her world from the fragile pages of the Paston Letters, a collection of 15th century correspondence that offers a rare glimpse into the lives of the gentry and those who toiled beneath them. Joan's tale is not one of heroics or grand rebellion, but of a quiet girl whose sharp eyes and sharper ears led her into a storm she could not escape. Let her story unfold as gently as the turning of a page, carrying you deeper into the rhythm of a forgotten world. Joan was not born to this manor, though the Paston Letters do not tell us where she came from, only that she was a maidservant, one of many who filled the sprawling household of Lady Agnes Paston, a matron whose wealth and status rested on the labor of those like Joan. Imagine her arriving at the manor at perhaps 14, her hands already calloused from years of work in some smaller household or village. Her hair is tucked beneath a plain linen coif, her tunic a dull brown, its hem frayed from brushing against stone floors. She is slight, unremarkable to the casual eye, but her gaze is quick, darting to corners and faces, catching details others might miss. The Paston Letters describe her only briefly as Joan the maid, but they hint at her cleverness, her knack for noticing what others overlooked. In a household where silence was a servant's first duty, Joan's curiosity was both her gift and her curse. She moved through her days much like the scullions and laundresses we met before, fetching water, scrubbing linens, and carrying trays of food to the great hall, but she did so with an alertness that set her apart. The manor was a maze of rooms and corridors, each with its own rhythm: the clatter of the kitchen, the soft murmur of the chapel, the heavy tread of the steward's boots. Joan learned these sounds, these patterns, and she learned to listen. Her tasks were endless, as they were for all servants. She woke before dawn, roused by the steward's call, and dressed in the half-light, her breath visible in the chill air. The manor's kitchen was a domain, where she kneaded dough for the coarse bread served to the lower household, her hands dusted with flour, her knuckles red from the cold water used to wash the wooden tables. The air was thick with the scent of baking bread, mingled with the sharp tang of onions and the greasy undertone of boiled mutton. She carried pails of water from the well, her arms straining under the weight, and swept the rushes from the hall, careful to avoid the eyes of Lady Agnes, who might pass through at any moment, her silk gown rustling like a warning. The Paston letters note the strict hierarchy of the household, where servants were to keep their place and speak only when bidden. Joan knew these rules, etched into her as surely as the grooves in the manor's stone steps, worn by countless feet before hers. Yet she watched, she listened, and in a household where secrets were as common as candlelight, she began to hear things she was not meant to hear. The manor was alive with whispers, not just among the servants but among the gentry themselves. Lady Agnes, a widow of considerable wealth, ruled her household with an iron hand, her letters filled with instructions for her stewards and complaints about disloyal kin. The Paston letters reveal a woman who prized control, who demanded loyalty not just from her family, but from every soul under her roof. The great hall, with its high beams and long tables, was a stage for the family's power, but behind its tapestries and closed doors lay a world of private dealings, alliances, rivalries, and, as Joan would discover, forbidden desires. It was in one such corridor, late in the evening, that Joan's fate began to shift. The Paston letters do not give us the exact date, but they record the incident with stark clarity. Joan was accused of listening at doors and repeating things above her station. The door in question belonged to Lady Agnes's chamber, a room where the lady met with her confidants, her kin, and, on occasion, a certain gentleman whose name the letters do not fully disclose, but whose presence was no secret to those who served. Picture Joan in that corridor, the candle in her hand casting a faint glow on the rough plaster walls. The hour is late, the household settling into the quiet that follows supper. Most servants are in the kitchen or their straw mats, but Joan has been sent to fetch a fresh candle for the lady's chamber. The door is slightly ajar, a sliver of light spilling into the corridor, and voices drift out low, urgent, tinged with something that makes Joan pause. She does not mean to linger, or so she tells herself, but the words are clear, a man's voice, smooth and persuasive, and Lady Agnes's, sharp but softened in a way Joan has never heard. The Paston letters hint at a scandal, a matter of the heart that threatened the household's honor. Joan hears fragments, a promise, a meeting, a name that should not be spoken. Her heart quickens, not from excitement but from the weight of what she now knows. She steps back, her foot brushing against the rushes, and the door creaks. The voices stop. She hurries away, the candle trembling in her hand. But it is too late. Someone has seen her, or perhaps the lady herself sensed the presence of an uninvited ear. The next morning, Joan's world begins to unravel. The steward calls her to the courtyard, where Lady Agnes stands, her face as cold as the frost on the cobblestones. The Paston letters describe the confrontation in brief but vivid terms. Joan was accused of idle tongue and false witness. Her crime not just listening, but repeating what she heard to another servant, a girl named Marjorie who worked in the laundry. Marjorie, less cautious than Joan, let the story slip to a cook who whispered it to a groom, and soon the manor was humming with rumors of an affair, a betrayal that could tarnish Lady Agnes's reputation and her family's standing. The letters do not say whether the affair was real or merely gossip, but they make clear the consequences for Joan. Lady Agnes, ever vigilant of her household's order, dismissed her publicly, her voice ringing out in the courtyard for all to hear. Joan was to leave at once, her belongings, a single spare tunic and a pair of worn shoes bundled in a cloth. The shame was not just in the dismissal but in the accusation. Joan had broken the unspoken rule of servitude, to see and hear nothing unless commanded. Imagine Joan standing there, her head bowed, the eyes of the other servants on her. The air is sharp with the scent of damp earth and the faint smoke from the kitchen chimney. Her hands, still rough from scrubbing linens, clutch the bundle tightly, as if it could anchor her against the tide of disgrace. The Paston letters do not tell us what became of her after she left the manor, but they hint at the fate of such servants, a return to a village perhaps, or work in a lesser household. her reputation stained by the label of false witness for a girl like Joan, whose only currency was her labor and her silence. Dismissal was a sentence to uncertainty, a step closer to poverty or worse. Yet the letters also suggest something else about Joan, not just a careless girl, but one who saw too much, who understood the fragile balance of power in the household. Servants like her were the eyes and ears of the manor, privy to secrets their masters could not hide. They saw the glances exchanged in the hall, heard the arguments behind closed doors, and carried the weight of those secrets in their silence. Joan's story is not just about her fall, but about the world she inhabited, a world where servants were both essential and invisible, trusted yet suspect. The past and letters reveal a household where every action was watched, every word weighed. Servants like Joan moved through this world like shadows, their presence felt only when they aired. The manor's corridors with their narrow stairwells and hidden alcoves were their domain, but also their prison. The past and letters describe the strict rules that govern their lives. Speak not of the lady's business, repeat not what you hear, keep your eyes low. Joan broke these rules, not out of malice, but out of curiosity, a desire to understand the world above her station. Her mistake was not just listening, but speaking, sharing a secret that rippled through the household like a stone dropped in still water. As you picture Joan leaving the manor, her bundle slung over her shoulder, the gate closing behind her, consider the weight of her silence. She knew the lady's secrets, the gentleman's promises, the tensions that simmered beneath the household's polished surface. Yet, she could not speak, not without risking everything. The past and letters, with their clipped accounts of her dismissal, leave us to imagine her thoughts: regret, perhaps, or defiance, or simply exhaustion. She was a girl caught between silence and knowledge, a servant whose curiosity made her human, but also made her vulnerable. The manor fades behind her, its stone walls swallowed by the morning mist, and Joan steps into a world where her story becomes a whisper, a cautionary tale for other servants. Do not listen too closely, they would say. Do not speak what you hear. This was the delicate balance of power in a medieval noble household, where servants saw everything but were expected to forget. Joan's tale, preserved in the fragile ink of the past and letters, reminds us of the human cost of that expectation. Her curiosity was her undoing, but it was also her mark on history, a fleeting glimpse of a girl who dared to listen. As you drift now, imagine yourself walking those corridors with her, the candlelight flickering, the voices behind the door fading into silence. Let the rhythm of her life, her steps, her secrets, carry you forward into the next chapter of this quiet, heavy world. Imagine yourself slipping through a narrow, dimly lit passageway, the air cool and damp, carrying the faint scent of wet stone and the distant aroma of roasted herbs from the kitchen far below. It is the late 14th century, and you are in a grand English manor, perhaps one like the Berkeley family, a sprawling estate or a French chateau depicted in the illuminated pages of Lestra's Riches. Hewers! The walls around you are rough, unadorned, unlike the polished halls where the lords and ladies tread, and your footsteps are muffled by the worn rushes underfoot scattered with sprigs of lavender, that release a faint soothing fragrance as you move. You are a servant, one of the many who keep this household alive, and this passageway is yours, not a place of honor, but a hidden vein through which the manor's lifeblood flows. In this segment, we delve into the secret world of medieval servants, a world of subtle codes, invisible paths, and quiet acts of resistance, pieced together from archaeological findings, household records, and the delicate etchings of courtly etiquette books. This is not a tale of open defiance, but of the small, silent ways servants carved out space for themselves in a world that demanded their obedience. Let the rhythm of their lives, steady and unhurried, carry you deeper into the shadows of the manor, where whispers and glances spoke louder than words. The life of a servant was governed by rules, both written and unspoken, etched into the very stones of the manor. Household ordinances, like those preserved from the Berkeley family, instructed servants to move swiftly, speak softly, and keep their eyes low, a mantra that shaped their every action. Yet beneath this surface of compliance lay a hidden culture, a language of symbols and spaces that servants used to navigate their world. These were not grand gestures, but subtle ones: a glance shared in the kitchen, a broom left at an angle to signal a warning, a whispered phrase passed from one servant to another in the flicker of candlelight. The manor itself was a map of power, its rooms and corridors divided into spaces where servants could and could not go. Archaeological excavations of medieval manors, such as those at Clarendon Palace or the Château de Falaise, reveal the physical traces of this division: grand halls with polished oak beams for the lords, and narrow winding stairwells worn smooth by countless feet for the servants. These invisible paths, as scholars call them, were the arteries of the household, connecting kitchens to cellars, laundries to privies, and allowing servants to move unseen. Their presence felt only in the tasks they completed. Picture yourself in one of these stairwells, the stone steps uneven under your feet, the air thick with the musty smell of damp wool and the faint tang of tallow from a candle stub you carry. The stairwell is narrow, barely wide enough for one person, and its walls are marked with faint scratches, perhaps the idle carvings of a scullion, or a mark left by a heavy tray, scraped against the stone. These passages were not just routes but sanctuaries, places where servants could pause, however briefly, away from the steward's watchful eye. Here, in the half-light, they exchanged glances, murmurs, or quick gestures that carried meaning no outsider could decipher. A raised eyebrow might warn of the lady's foul mood. A finger tapped twice on a bucket might signal that the steward was near. These were the codes of survival, honed over years of living in a world where a single misstep could mean dismissal. The Trisrichis, a 15th century manuscript, depicts servants in the margins of its lavish scenes, their faces impassive but their postures hinting at a shared understanding, a silent language that bound them together. Gossip was the lifeblood of this hidden culture, a currency more valuable than the meager wages recorded in household rolls. The pastern letters, though written by gentry, mentioned idle tongues of servants, a grudging acknowledgement of their power to spread news faster than a messenger on horseback. In the kitchen, where the air was heavy with the scent of boiling pottage and a sharp bite of onions, servants gathered around the hearth, their voices low as they shared what they had seen or heard. A laundress might whisper of a torn chemise found in the lord's chamber, its hem stained with mud from a midnight ride. A groom might mutter of a horse saddled in secret, its hooves muffled with cloth. These stories were not mere entertainment but a form of resistance, a way to reclaim a sliver of agency in a world that demanded silence. The ordinances of household warned against such talk, decreeing that no servant shall speak of the master's business. But the very existence of this rule proves how common it was. Gossip traveled through the manor like a current, from the stables to the laundry, from the scullery to the chapel, binding servants in a web of shared knowledge. Yet gossip could be dangerous, as Joan the maid learned in our previous segment. The pastern letters hint at other incidents, unnamed servants dismissed for repeating what was not theirs to know. One particularly mysterious case recorded in a 14th century French manners account speaks of a poisoned dish served at a banquet, the blame falling swiftly on a kitchen boy who spoke too freely of the cook's dealings with a local apothecary. The records do not say whether the boy was guilty or merely a scapegoat, but they note his punishment, a public whipping and banishment, his name erased from the household rolls. The story lingered among the servants, whispered in the corridors, a reminder of the peril of speaking too much. Yet it also became a kind of legend, a tale of defiance against the unseen forces that govern their lives. Archaeological findings support this story. Excavations at French manors have uncovered small clay vials, possibly for herbs, or poisons hidden in the crevices of kitchen walls, suggesting that servants had their own secrets, their own ways of subverting the order. These acts of resistance were rarely bold. A servant might dawdle over a task, dragging a broom slowly across the floor to steal a moment's rest, or forget to clean a corner of the privy, knowing the stench would annoy the steward. They might carve a mark into a beam across, a circle, A crude initial not as vandalism but as a quiet claim to existence, a way to say, "I was here." Excavations at English manors like Stokesay Castle have revealed such marks, faint but deliberate, etched into the wood or stone of servant quarters. These were the silent rebellions, too small to threaten the household but enough to give servants a sense of self in a world that sought to erase them. The Trisrichus shows servants in their plain tunics, their faces turned away from the viewer. But look closely, and you might see a hand resting lightly on another's shoulder, a gesture of solidarity. That speaks louder than any shout. The spaces where servants lived were as much a part of their culture as their codes. The kitchen was their heart, a place of heat and noise where the air was thick with the smell of grease, herbs, and burning wood. Here, they worked side by side, their hands moving in rhythm, kneading dough, stirring pottage, scouring pots with sand. The kitchen was loud, but it was also a refuge, a place where the steward rarely lingered and the servants could speak, if only in whispers. Beyond the kitchen lay the cellars, damp and cold, where barrels of ale and sacks of grain were stored. Servants were sent here to fetch supplies, their lanterns casting eerie shadows on the stone walls. These were places of solitude, where a servant might linger to catch their breath or hide a small treasure, a crust of bread saved from a meal, a broken comb found in the rushes. Archaeological digs at manors like Bodiam Castle have uncovered such items, tucked into cracks or buried beneath floorboards, proof of the small ways servants claimed space for themselves. The servant-only stairwells, often tucked behind tapestries or hidden in corners, were another realm. These were not the grand staircases of the lords, with their carved banisters and polished steps, but narrow, spiraling passages, their stones worn into shallow dips by years of use. Excavations at sites like Gainsborough Old Hall have revealed these stairwells, some with small alcoves, where servants might have rested unseen by the household. Here, they could exchange a quick word, a warning, or a stolen moment of laughter. The bells that summoned them small. Brass bells hung in the halls or chambers were both a call to duty and a reminder of their place. Each bell had its own tone, its own meaning. One for the kitchen, another for the ladies' chamber, a third for the stables. Servants learned these sounds as surely as they learned the rules. Their ears attuned to the manor's rhythm. Courtly etiquette books, like those of Christine de Pizan, described the precision required of servants, who had to respond to a bell's call as if their feet were wings. Yet in those fleeting moments between the bell and the task, they found space to be human. The manor's chapel was another space where servants gathered, though not as equals. They stood at the back, their heads bowed, while the lords and ladies knelt at the front, their cushions embroidered with silk. The air here was different, heavy with the scent of incense and beeswax, the murmur of Latin prayers filling the silence. Servants were expected to be pious, to pray for the household's soul, but the chapel was also a place of observation. From the back, they could watch the gentry, the way the Lord's son fidgeted during the sermon, the way the lady's hand lingered on her prayer book, her lips barely moving. These observations fueled the gossip that flowed through the manor, a quiet power that servants wielded in their silence. The Trisrichus captures this divide, showing servants as small figures in the background, their faces blurred but their presence undeniable. The culture of servants was not just about survival, but about connection. They were a community, bound by shared labor and shared secrets. In the laundry, where the air was thick with steam and a sharp bite of lime, women worked together, their hands moving in unison as they scrubbed linens. They sang softly, songs of the village or of lost loves, their voices blending into a hum that soothed the monotony. Men in the stables shared stories of the road, of merchants and pilgrims they had seen, their words punctuated by the rhythmic scrape of a curricomb against a horse's flank. These moments of connection were fleeting, stolen between tasks, but they were vital. They reminded servants that they were not alone, that their lives, though invisible to the lords, mattered to each other. Excavations at manors like Haddon Hall have found small tokens, beads, bits of ribbon, a carved wooden spoon buried in the servant quarters, perhaps gifts or keepsakes passed between friends. Yet this culture was fragile, always at risk of discovery. A misplaced word, a too loud laugh, could draw the steward's attention, and punishment was swift. The household rolls of the Berkeley family record fines for servants who spoke out of turn or lingered overlong, their wages docked, or their rations cut. Worse was the fear of accusation, as the poisoned dish incident shows. Servants were often the first to be blamed for mishaps: a spilled jug, a cold hearth, a missing spoon, and their word carried little weight against a lord's. Yet they persisted, their silent rebellions woven into the fabric of the manor. A broom left askew, a mark carved in a beam, a whisper shared in a stairwell, these were their legacy, small but enduring. As you imagine yourself moving through those hidden paths, the air cool against your skin, the faint chime of a bell in the distance, let the rhythm of their lives carry you. They were the hands that kept the manor alive, and in their silence they spoke volumes. Imagine yourself standing in the great hall of a Burgundian palace. The year is 1420, and the air is rich with the scent of beeswax candles, their golden light flickering across polished oak tables, and tapestries woven with scenes of hunts and feasts. You are not a scullion scrubbing pots in the kitchen's heat, nor a laundry maid with raw hands stinging from lye, but a higher servant, a lady in waiting, a valet, or perhaps a cupbearer in the household of Margaret of Burgundy, a countess whose wealth and influence shaped the rhythm of this court. Your tunic is finer than those of the lower servants, its wool dyed a soft green or blue, and your movements are practiced, graceful, for you have been trained since youth to serve with elegance and silence. The hall is alive with the murmur of voices, the clink of silver goblets, and the faint strains of a lute played by a minstrel in the corner. Yet your role is to be both present and invisible, a shadow, who anticipates every need of the noble family. In this segment, we step into the world of the upper-tier servants, whose lives were marked by privilege and peril, drawn from the meticulous records of Burgundian household accounts and the etiquette manuals of Christine de Pizan. This is a world of ritual and restraint, where every gesture carried meaning, and the line between servant and companion was as delicate as the silk you handled. Let the steady cadence of their duties, the soft rustle of their steps, guide you through this refined yet demanding existence. Your day begins not at the harsh 4 a.m. call of the steward, but at a gentler hour, perhaps as the first light filters through the narrow windows of the palace. You rise from a pallet in a shared chamber, not a straw mat by the kitchen hearth, but a narrow bed with a thin woolen blanket, a small step above the lower servants' quarters. The air smells faintly of lavender and polished wood, for your chamber is closer to the ladies' apartments, where cleanliness and order are paramount. You dress carefully, smoothing your tunic, adjusting the linen coif that frames your face, for appearance is part of your duty. The Burgundian household accounts list servants like you by name, and Royal Marie the lady-in-waiting, Jean the valet, Thomas the cupbearer, each with a specific salary, often a few coins, more than the scullions, and occasionally a gift of cloth or a cast-off gown from the countess. Your training began years ago, perhaps as a child of lesser nobility sent to the court to learn service and manners, a path to favor or even marriage, though such hopes were fragile and uncertain. Your first task is to attend the countess as she rises. You enter her chamber, its walls hung with silk tapestries, the air heavy with the scent of rosewater and the faint musk of fur from her bed coverings. Christine de Pizan's manuals written for the courts of France and Burgundy describe the precise etiquette of this moment. You curtsy low, your eyes fixed on the floor, and present a basin of warm water scented with herbs for the countess to wash her face. Your hands must be steady, your movements fluid, for any clumsiness is a mark against you. You help her dress, fastening the laces of her gown, its velvet soft against your calloused fingers, and pinning her veil with a silver brooch that gleams in the candle light. The countess speaks little, perhaps a murmured command to fetch her prayer book, and you respond with a soft yes, my lady, your voice trained to be clear but unobtrusive. The household accounts note the cost of such luxuries: rosewater, silk, silver, but they also record your labor, a line item among dozens, your name a fleeting mark in the ledger of the court. In the great hall, your role as a cupbearer or server comes to life during the morning meal. The tables are set with linen cloths, their edges embroidered with the Countess's crest, and the air is alive with the scent of fresh-baked manchette bread, roasted pheasant, and spiced wine mulled with cinnamon and cloves. You stand at the edge of the hall, a silver pitcher in your hands, its surface cool and smooth, waiting for the signal to pour. Christine de Pizan's writings are strict. Never pour with the left hand, for it is ill-mannered. Bow before and after, and touch not the rim of the goblet. You move with precision, stepping forward when the Countess raises her hand, filling her goblet with a slow, deliberate stream of wine, the liquid catching the light like rubies. The lords and ladies around the table barely notice you, their conversation a low hum of alliances and gossip, but you are attuned to every gesture, every glance. A spilled drop, a hesitated step could draw a frown, and though dismissal is rare for a servant of your rank, the shame of a public rebuke lingers long. The morning passes and your duties shift to the ladies' apartments, where you might so read or play the harp to soothe her. The Burgundian accounts list young women like you, often daughters of minor knights, trained in needlework and music to serve as companions. You sit by a window, the light falling across a piece of linen you're embroidering with silver thread, each stitch a testament to your skill. The needle pricks your finger, a small sting you ignore, for the Countess is watching, her eyes sharp despite her calm demeanor. The air smells of wax and parchment, for a scribe nearby is copying letters, and you listen to the scratch of his quill, a sound as familiar as the rustle of the Countess's gown. If she asks you to read, you choose a passage from a psalter, your voice soft and even, pronouncing the Latin with care, though you understand only fragments. Christine de Pizan advises that a lady-in-waiting must be learned enough to entertain, but humble enough to serve, a balance you strive to maintain. The afternoon brings a different rhythm as the household prepares for a banquet, a display of the Countess's wealth and power. You are sent to the wardrobe, a chamber filled with chests of silk, velvet, and fur, their rich scents mingling with the faint must of old wood. You select a gown for the Countess, perhaps one of crimson damask, its sleeves lined with ermine, and carry it carefully, its weight heavy in your arms. You help her dress again, arranging the folds of fabric, securing a jeweled belt that glints in the torchlight. The Burgundian accounts record such gifts, gowns, belts, even rings given to favored servants. But these come with a price: absolute loyalty, absolute discretion. You know the rumors that swirl through the court, whispers of alliances and betrayals, of a knight who lingers too long in the Countess's presence. You see the glances, hear the lowered voices, but you keep your face blank, your eyes low. As Christine de Pizan instructs, a servant's heart must be a locked chest. The banquet is a spectacle, the hall transformed with garlands of ivy and tables laden with dishes swans roasted whole, their feathers reattached for show, and tarts filled with custard and dried fruit, their sweetness cutting through the smoky air. As a cupbearer, you move among the guests, your pitcher heavy, your steps measured. The etiquette is rigid, you bow to each lord, pour with your right hand and step back silently, your presence a fleeting shadow. The music swells, a harp and lute weaving a delicate melody, and the guests laugh, their voices bright with wine. You notice everything: the way a lady's hand brushes a knight's, the way the Countess's smile tightens when a certain name is mentioned but you say nothing. The Burgundian accounts list the costs of these feasts, down to the last candle, but they also hint at the undercurrents, the delicate matters that servants were expected to ignore. Your role is to serve, to anticipate, to disappear. Yet this life, though polished, is not without hardship. The hours are long, the expectations unrelenting. You stand for hours, your legs aching, your hands steady despite the weight of the pitcher. The air in the hall is warm, thick with the scent of roasted meat and spilled wine, and sweat gathers beneath your tunic, though you must appear unruffled. The household accounts note the salaries of upper servants higher than the scullions, yes, but still meager compared to the wealth you handle daily. A lady-in-waiting might receive a new gown at Christmas, a valet a pair of gloves, but these are tokens, not security. Your position depends on the Countess's favor, and favor is fickle. A misstep, a forgotten curtsy, a poorly sewn hem could see you demoted to the kitchen, your place taken by another. Christine de Pizan warns of this. Serve with diligence, for the court is a ladder with many rungs, and to fall is to lose all. There is another side to this life, one the records only hint at, the possibility of intimacy, of crossing the line from servant to companion. The Burgundian accounts mention young women who rose from ladies-in-waiting to confidants, even mistresses, their names recorded with gifts of land or gold. You see it in the Countess's chamber, where a younger servant, perhaps a girl of 16, laughs softly as she brushes the Countess's hair, their voices low and familiar. Such moments are rare, dangerous, for they blur the boundaries of rank. A valet might catch the eye of a lady, a cupbearer might share a quiet jest with a knight, but these connections are fraught with risk. The etiquette manuals are clear. Let not familiarity breed presumption. Yet the heart does not always obey, and the court is a place of whispered intrigues, of stolen glances that could lead to favor or ruin. As the banquet ends, your duties continue. You help clear the hall, carrying silver plates to the pantry, their surfaces sticky with grease. The air grows cooler, the candles burning low, their wax pulling on the tables. You return to the Countess's chamber, where you prepare her for bed, heating water for a bath, its steam rising in the chilly air, scented with chamomile and mint. You pour the water into a wooden tub, your arms steady despite their ache, and stand by as she bathes, your eyes averted, your presence a silent reassurance. The Burgundian accounts list the cost of such bath serbs: firewood, linen towels, but not the labor behind them, the hours you spend ensuring every detail is perfect. When she retires, you tidy the chamber, folding her gown, sweeping the rushes. The soft crackle of straw under your feet a familiar sound. Only then do you return to your own chamber, where you lie on your pallet, the distant hum of the palace fading into silence. This was the life of an upper-tier servant, a world of elegance and exhaustion, where every gesture was a performance, every silence a shield. The Burgundian household accounts in Christine de Pizan's manuals paint a picture of a court, where beauty masked labor, where favor was both a gift and a chain. You served with grace, your hands steady, your eyes low, but you carried the weight of the Countess's world. As you drift now, imagine yourself standing in that great hall, the candlelight soft against your skin, the lute's melody fading into the night. Let the rhythm of their lives, their quiet strength, carry you toward the close of this journey. As the echoes of the great hall fade, imagine yourself standing at the threshold of the manor, the heavy oak door ajar, letting in a cool night breeze that carries the faint scent of damp earth and distant wood smoke. The year is no longer fixed, perhaps it is 1360 or 1420 or 1452, but the weight of the servants' lives lingers, their quiet footsteps etched into the stones of history. You've walked with them through a single, unending day as a scullion, your hands raw from lie and your back bent from carrying water. You've stood in Joan's shadowed corridor, her curiosity a spark that burned too brightly. You've slipped through the hidden stairwells, where whispers and glances wove a secret language, and you've served in the polished hall of a countess, where elegance masked the ache of unrelenting duty. These were the invisible ones, the hands that polished the silver, swept the rushes, and kept the fires burning, their lives recorded only in fleeting lines of household rolls letters, and the worn stones of old manors. The Berkeley accounts the past in letters the Burgundian records, and the etiquette manuals of Christine de Pizan have guided us not to a tale of kings or conquests, but to the quiet heavy world behind the tapestries where labor and silence shaped existence. Now, as you stand at this threshold, let your mind drift across the centuries. The manor is still, its corridors dark, the air soft with the scent of lavender and wax. The servants' world was one of endurance, of small rebellions and unspoken bonds, a rhythm as steady as the tides. They were not heroes in the way history often demands, but their lives were no less real, no less human. They scrubbed the floors you walked, poured the wine you imagined, and whispered the secrets that rippled through time. Their stories, drawn from the fragile pages of history, remind us of the countless hands that built the past, hands that are now dust, but whose work endures in the stones, the letters, the very air of the places they served. As you settle into your own quiet space, the comfort of your bed are whirled away from their straw mats. Let the rhythm of their lives ease you toward rest. The manor fades into the night, its walls holding the echoes of their whispers, and you drift, carried gently into sleep by the forgotten voices of those who cleaned, watched, waited, and lived.